Section 2, Operation. Alright, sequence testing of the control equipment. In order to test the correct function of each of the switch contactor relays to determine if the operation of each of the units is properly sequenced to the other units, the following outline is given. The preliminary. A. Insulate the contacts of the G switch and with the engine dead, closing the battery switch, charge the air system. See that the air is furnished to the pneumatic apparatus. Place the control in off and then throttle in the idle. 2. Starting the sequence check. Closing the control switch, close the number 1 start button, G1 closed, followed by the G release button of the G and the G open. Close the number 2 start button, the G2 close, and followed by the G release button, G2 on the G open. Main circuit and sequence check. Remove move the controller to forward, open the throttle to the P1, P2 close the T1 by hand for the M1 close the T2 by hand, close the M2 close. Release the T1 and the T2, M1 and M2 open. Note that the starting switches note that the starting switches contact closed when the throttle is open and the controller is forward and or reverse. Repeat A to E with the controller in reverse. Note that the controller cannot be made while the throttle is open. Preparing the unit for service. Electrical equipment. All boards of the gears other than parts of the motor, generators, and control equipment should be properly lubricated. Bolts and should be inspected and tightened if necessary. Control fingers and contacts on the control reverser drums should be given with a light lubrication with the cloths moistened with oil. All fuses should be in place with a good condition. Check the height of the solution in the battery and the specific gravity using the tested hydrometer. Make sure that all the connections of the generator unit and the battery are complete. Tight and clean, and follow the instructions issued by the battery manufacturer for the particular battery in the locomotive. Mechanical parts. Examine the mechanical parts of to see that everything is running in the order. Check the lubrication, brake rigging, and journal boxes. See that there are no persons working on the trucks or in any position where they are liable to be injured with an electric circuit or energized or units moved. Air system. Make sure that all the air drain cocks and the air reserve air lines and etc. are closed so that the main reserve cutout cock, brake cylinders cutout cock, and distributing valve cutout cock are open. Complete the information covering the operation with the various units of the air brake system will be found with a separate instructions book furnished by the manufacturer of the equipment concerned. Oil and water and sand supplies. The engine should never be started unless there is a sufficient circulating cooling water lubricating oil with the respective system. The lubricating oil lever in the engine based on the reserve should be based above the minimum mark of the gauge rod. Check the fuel with water supplies with the gauge respective tanks. Follow the instructions issued by the engine builder. Fill the sandboxes with a dry and clean and provided with the railway system. Alright, preparatory to starting the engine. Before starting the engine, the operator should see that there are no tools, bolts, and nuts and other materials lying around. The engine generator could possibly get caught in the rail into any of the work mechanisms. Control switches. The battery switch should be closed. The lubricating oil system, valves, and systems should be set properly. Fueling oil system, the valves and systems should be set properly. 1. Starting the combustion engine. Place the controller in the reverser with no control is used in the main handle in the off position, the throttle handle in the idle position, and close the control switch. The throttle may advance a few notches for the start. 2. Pressing an engine starting push the button, hold on until the engine fires, release when the engine fires. Do not attempt to start both the engines simultaneously during the first few minutes for the engine operation of the engine lubrication. Oil pressure should be watched to see that the normal pressure is maintained. Testing motor rotation. Every time the traction motor leaves the power terminal to reverse area are disconnected with the motor to the reverse are disconnected with the motor should be tested for the correct rotation reconnected. The test is very important. It should be very careful to make as possible for the locomotive is apparent with the operated with control either direction still have most of the incorrect of the connected most have been incorrectly connected to but which may eventually produce serious or costly motor trouble. For example, if the field armature lead or the motor are interchanged with the motor would operate correctly when the car or the locomotive is removed in one direction, but in the opposite direction, the motor field would be cut off at the section area action of the reverser with the condition of the continuing service of the sometime before that it was found improbably resolved the roasted out motor. To make this test appropriate for the locomotive on the least possible number of the motors, this may only open the cutout switch fields for the shutting down of the power plant. If the locomotive can be operated with only one motor, testing it is very simple, and run the locomotive with the forward direction for the short distance and reverse it, operate it in reverse direction. If the locomotive operates approximately the same in both directions, the connections are correct. Repeat all the other motors for the locomotive operating at them one at a time. If it is impossible to operate one motor at the time, and the following procedure should be followed: oil the track on which the locomotive is to be operating. Spread the oil on both rails. The operator of the locomotive on a few motors as possible. Then operate a few to the locomotive only a few motors as possible. This section will track with a forward and reversing direction until each of the motors operating has been slipped its wheels in both directions. Repeat the same test on the other motors, if any, until all the motors have been slipped where their wheels are in both directions. The following combination are one of the most likely to be encountered with the most making these tests. The motor and motors operate with the locomotive in the direction indicated with the reverse lever. This indicates the connections are correct. The motor and motors operate with the locomotive in the opposite direction to indicate that by the reversing level, indicated by the reversing lever. This could be caused by the reversal of leads of the reverser, the motor being hung on the opposite side of the axle from the assumed on the diagram. If the reverser leads an interchange correct at the reverser, if the latter interchange for the motor field leads to the motor lead contactors, repeat test. One motor tending to drive in the axle is one direction, and another trying to drive in the opposite direction. The reverser wiring agrees with the diagram. If the reverser wiring agrees with the diagram, interchange the field leads of the proper motor so the locomotive will operate according to the reverse handle position. 4. A motor may operate locomotive correctly in one direction slowly, but not all in the opposite direction. They usually caused by the interchanging of an armature field lead, such as an error will correct the operation in one direction, will cut the field out of the circuit entirely with the opposite direction. The two motors tested one time. The motor may act as the brake. Try to keep it in the axle from turning. Check all the diagram and correct the proper placing. And if incorrect any of the above troubles, check with the diagram, correct the circuit with a proper point. This will avoid future confusion caused by the locomotive wiring not in agreement with the diagram. Alright, operating the locomotive. Watch the engine temperature. 2. Test the air brakes. They do not apply to moving the locomotive until the brake gauge hand indicates a full brake pipe pressure. 3. Start and locomotive regulated speed. After the engine is running and closed with the run buttons, place the controller on the reverse level for the desired locomotive direction. Notch out of the throttle handle, opening the throttle handle, increasing the speed of the engine to increase the voltage across with the traction motors and accelerate the locomotive. Motor field shunting is automatically obtained with the predetermined main generator voltage. Voltage relay controlled with the transit to close and open the field shunting contactors. Caution. Great care must be exercised to avoid overspeeding the traction motors. Determine the maximum permissible locomotive speed for the wheel size, gear ratio, and maximum permissible motor RPM. Do not exceed that speed. As there is no resistor in series for the traction motor and it is notched, the throttle control may be used by a running position depending on the operation conditions to decrease the speed notched back on the handle. 4. To stop the locomotive, move the throttle to the idle position. Apply the air brakes in the usual manner. 5. The reverse of the locomotive. With the throttle handle in the idle, the throttle control reverse handle to the position required. With the locomotive in position, power should never be applied with the control or reverser handle in the position opposite to the direction of locomotive motion. If the recourse of such action is necessary to take stop of the locomotive abruptly, it must be remembered that serious damage to the motors is liable to result. Leaving the locomotive. Stop the engine with the operating engine. Should shut down the valves. 2. Pull out the run buttons if used and open the control switch. 3. Place the control and the reverser in the off or move to the lock controller. 4. The open brakes. Open the battery switch. 5. Set the handbrake. 6. Water system must be properly protected in the cold weather. Possible troubles and remedies. If the purpose of the proper function of each part of the equipment is learned, it will assist the quick location of remedy of the trouble. 1. Generator fails to crank the engine. If the instruction starting the engine has been observed but the engine fails to start, the trouble may be due in the following. Low battery voltage. This indicated the failure to the starting of the contactors to close and by failure of starting motor to bring the engine up to the firing speed. Checking the battery change charge and examining for corroded terminals. B. Failure to contactors to close. If the fuses are good and the battery is charged, to check for the open circuits and the controlling wire. Also check the contacts on the push button. C. Start switch is closed. Starting the switch is closed, but the engine does not start. Check the open circuit in the wiring. Inspect the switch contacts for in the fuse. 2. Fall off of power. To decrease in engine power should become manifestly operated by the failure to maintain the usual speed with a given load with a given part of the run by the character of the engine noise or meter identification. The falling off of the power may be due to any of the following causes. A. The engine condition for a remedy. C. The engine builder's instruction book. 3. A loss of power indicated by the overspinning of the engine may due to the failure of the field contactors operating properly. Checking the open circuits in wiring, poor, dirty, and corroded contacts and switches. B. Check the broken and loose wiring at the resistors. Check the closing of the battery change and contactor. Check the wire and finger terminal boards and controller if using throttle devices, etc. 3. Loss of power indicated with the overspeeding an engine. Continued. D. Check the line switches. Ensure that they close properly with the good contacts. Failure of the line switch to close may be due to poor fingering, interlocking with the contact reversing controller. The failure of reversing the throw of the control position. 4. Complete failure of electrical power. No voltage on the main generator. This may cause due to the failure of the field switches to close, burned out resistors in the main auxiliary generator field circuits to open circuits elsewhere in the field circuit. B. Failure to reverser to flow. The pneumatic type, throw the reverser by hand. Complete failure of electrical power. C. Open the circuit of the control wires. Check the fingers of the control interlocking fingers on the reverser and the control wiring connections. D. Faulty contactor operations may be due to the wide air gap of the magnetic switches binding to prevent the free movement of the good contact. 5. Miscellaneous troubles caused by apparent loss of power. If an engine is running at full speed and load and the locomotive does not make it its usual speed, the trouble may be due to dragging brakes or air brake not fully released head windings and hot truck journal bearings or traction motor axles and armature bearings. 6. Failure of battery charging. As indicated with the battery ammeter, the trouble may be due to blowing a charging fuse, improper fuel regulator, blowing a charging fuse, improper voltage regulator operation, burned out auxiliary generator field resistor, opening circuits in the wiring, improper reverse current relay operation. 7. Compressor fails to pump up air. And the compressor does not operate properly. The cause may also follow. The compressor operates with the fails to maintain air pressure. Check the angle and drain cutout pipe and air hose, magnet valves, safety valves, and other points of leakage. If it is still unable to maintain proper pressure, report to maintainer. 7. Compressed air fails to pump air. B. Faulty compressor valve operation can cause the failure to maintain pressure, excessive operation of the compressor, and overheating. 8. Miscellaneous troubles. B. Lubrication and cooling system. Refer to the section devoted to these sections. Do not operate inadequate lubrication oil, water, excessive temperature, low pressure, diluted lubrication oil, hot temp bearings, or other abnormal conditions that may result in serious damage. 9. General. A general study of this books and actual equipment will enable the operator to diagnose and carefully many minor causes of trouble. Some of the troubles can be corrected by the operators and most obvious some of the remedies of the maintainers, and generally the equipment should be not operated under the condition that this will result in serious damage to parts. Trouble should be promptly corrected to obtain the longest life of all parts. 10. Common causes of faulty operation. Some of the most common causes of faulty operation of the switches and control motors and auxiliary main apparatuses are: A. Improper contact interlocks with the control fingers caused by dirty gum surfaces due to heavy oil, burning oxides, and proper adjustment. B. Contactors too wide, air gap contacting opening, resulting in unnecessary high closing voltage, binding in the bearings and loosening the shunts and loose springs. Low control pressure and leaky valves and remotely operated devices. C. Motor. Bearing troubles are due to improper lubrication assembly, excessive wear, brush holders loose, broken to the close of the communicator brushes, greatly worn, binding of the improper grade, losing the connection, broken springs and shaft blades. D. General. Excessive vibration causes breakage, loose connections in terminal fuses, etc., and blown fuses. Section 3. Main generator.